Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. Today, we're going to take a close look at Abbott Laboratories, a company that's been catching my eye.
Yeah, they've definitely been on my radar too.
Really interesting to see their stock performance while the market, it's been up and down lately.
Right. Lots of volatility out there.
We'll be using technical analysis, stock analysis, recent price movements to really try and understand what's going on.
Looking at trends and opportunities as well.
So their stock is up over 6% in the last month, and then a whopping 22% over the past year.
It hit a 52-week high recently.
So is Abbott like a safe haven in this crazy market? Or
Yeah. Are there any warning signs we should be aware of?
And what everyone wants to know is now the time to buy, sell, or hold.
Well, one thing to consider is how investor behavior has been shifting lately with, all this talk about tariffs and trade wars.
Oh, definitely.
People are getting nervous.
Yeah, they want stability.
Right. They're looking for what we call defensive growth stocks.
Companies that offer steady growth and are less vulnerable to, the ups and downs of the economy.
Like Abbott.
And speaking of Abbott, their recent earnings report for 2024 was really impressive.
Revenue is up. Net income surged, and they even beat earnings per share expectations.
So it seems like they're handling these turbulent times pretty well.
Their performance is definitely attractive to investors, but it's not just about the numbers. Their strategic positioning is important too.
How so?
Well, they have a very diverse portfolio: diabetes, care diagnostics, cardiovascular devices. It kind of spreads the risk, if you will.
Provides a buffer if one area of the market weakens.
And then there's the fact that over 60% of their sales come from international markets.
Which could be a good thing if those tariff fears start to subside.
Yeah, it's all about balancing the potential risks and rewards.
Let's look at things from a technical perspective now.
Okay.
The analysis suggests a hold recommendation for now.
Makes sense.
Abbott is trading above both its 50-day and 200-day moving averages.
Generally a positive sign.
And last year they had what's called a golden cross.
Where the 50-day moving average crosses above the 200-day moving average.
Right, often seen as a bullish signal.
Yeah, it can indicate potential for a long-term upward trend.
But then we have the Relative Strength Index, or RSI.
It's currently at 68.4.
Getting close to that overbought threshold of 70.
It suggests that the stock's price might have risen too quickly and could be due for a correction.
A pullback or consolidation.
It's important to remember that these indicators are just tools, though.
Not guarantees.
We always have to look at the bigger picture.
So for people who already own Abbott stock, it might be best to just hold on for now.
And if you're thinking about buying in,
Waiting for a dip might be a good strategy.
the analysis suggests a potential entry point around $134 to $135.
If a pullback happens.
Always remember, no single indicator tells the whole story.
Now, there's been some news that's caught my attention, and I'm sure it's on a lot of investors' minds as well.
What's that?
Insider selling.
Yes.
Several executives have sold millions of dollars worth of stock recently.
It's natural to wonder why they're selling when the stock's doing so well.
Makes you think.
Some of it was tied to option exercises, which is pretty common.
But the timing is still interesting with the stock near its high.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to our analysis.
We need to be careful and do our research.
Insider actions can provide insights, but we can't rely on them alone.
So we have this mix of positive performance, bullish signals, but also insider selling and the potential for a pullback.
It's not always black and white.
Where does all this leave us then with Abbott?
Well, it's definitely a company that deserves to be on our watch list.
It seems to be in a good position overall, but
There are some valid reasons for caution, too.
maybe not a screaming buy just yet.
But it's worth keeping an eye on.
We'll see what happens with their earnings projections for the coming years and keep monitoring those trade developments.
Definitely lots of factors to consider. So we're back talking Abbott Laboratories.
We've seen some positive signals and some potential caution flags as well. What should we be watching for going forward?
Well, one thing that jumps out is the projected earnings decline.
Oh, right. Analysts are forecasting a 13% drop per year for the next 3 years.
Yeah, quite a contrast to their recent performance.
It definitely makes you think,
If that actually happens, it could put some downward pressure on the stock.
even if they maintain their current dividend.
Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see if they can counteract this potential decline.
Can they find new growth opportunities? Can they become more efficient?
Those are the big questions.
And how will the tariff situation play out?
Right, if things escalate, their international exposure could become a liability.
But if trade relations improve,
They could be in a prime position to benefit from global growth.
for now it seems like we're in a wait-and-see mode.
While we're waiting, let's go back to those insider sales we talked about earlier.
Yeah, the timing and the amounts involved were definitely a bit eyebrow-raising.
Makes you wonder what's going on behind the scenes.
We know some of it was related to option exercises,
But there were also some pretty significant sales that weren't.
like that big sale by the chairman and CEO back in February.
It didn't seem to spook the market too much at the time.
But it's still something to keep in mind.
It just adds another piece to the puzzle.
It's like we're trying to put together a puzzle,
Hmm.
but some of the pieces don't quite fit.
That's a good analogy. It highlights the importance of being a critical investor.
Not just relying on headlines or gut feelings.
Do you research, analyze the data, and consider multiple perspectives?
And be prepared for surprises.
Yeah.
The market can be unpredictable.
So the technical analysis says, hold for now, but what could change that recommendation to a buy or a sell?
Well, if the stock breaks above its 52-week high of $141.23
That could signal strong upward momentum.
and make a buy more attractive,
But on the flip side, if it drops significantly below its 50-day moving average,
which is around $134 right now.
that could indicate a shift in the trend. And maybe a sell signal,
And of course, any bad news about their earnings
especially if they miss those growth targets.
could trigger a sell-off.
It's important to stay informed and track those key metrics.
Speaking of staying informed,
It's always good to remember that knowledge is power when it comes to investing.
do your own due diligence.
Don't just take our word for it or anyone else's.
Right. Analyze the information you find. Make your own conclusions.
And make decisions based on your own goals and risk tolerance.
So as we wrap up this part of our look at Abbott,
It's clear that this is a company with a lot going on.
compelling arguments for both optimism and caution.
It's what makes it so interesting.
In the final part, we'll zoom out and look at Abbott within the bigger picture of the healthcare sector.
And explore some potential future scenarios.
Stick with us. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Abbott Laboratories.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Their performance investor trends, technical, signals those insider sales.
Now it's time to zoom out a bit,
Place Abbott in the context of the overall healthcare sector.
which is a sector that's always changing.
New tech, an aging population, constantly evolving regulations.
It creates a really dynamic landscape with lots of challenges, but also opportunities.
And within this landscape, Abbott has some real strengths going for it.
For sure.
Their diversified portfolio, for one.
They're not overly reliant on any single product or market,
It gives them a certain degree of stability.
which is especially valuable in uncertain times.
And we can't forget their track record of innovation.
Consistently coming out with new products, particularly in diabetes care and cardiovascular devices.
And then there's their global presence.
Over 60% of their sales coming from outside the U.S.
That's huge potential for growth if global trade conditions improve.
On the other hand, we have to acknowledge the potential headwinds, too.
Like that projected decline in earnings.
If they can't offset that with new revenue or improved efficiency, it could definitely impact their stock.
And let's not forget about competition.
The healthcare sector is full of innovative companies.
All fighting for market share.
Abbott has to stay on the cutting edge if they want to maintain their position.
So after all this back and forth,
Yeah.
what's the verdict on Abbott as an investment?
Is it a buy, sell, or hold?
Well, we've seen it's not a simple answer.
There are strong arguments on both sides,
The technical analysis says hold for now.
but that could easily change depending on how those key indicators move.
And it's important to remember that technical analysis is only part of the story.
We also need to look at the fundamentals, the overall industry, and the economic climate.
It's like putting together a puzzle.
We need all the pieces to see the complete picture.
And even then, there are always surprises.
The market doesn't always behave the way we expect.
So what advice would you give someone who's considering investing in Abbott?
I'd say do your homework.
Look at their financials. Understand their growth drivers.
Analyze their competition.
Weigh the pros and cons and think about the potential risks.
Those insider sales are worth considering too.
While they're not always a red flag, they're definitely a factor to consider.
It's about gathering information and making a smart decision based on your own goals and risk tolerance.
So as we wrap up our analysis of Abbott Laboratories today,
It's clear they're a company with a lot of moving parts,
a mix of potential and uncertainty.
which makes them all the more fascinating to follow.
Before we go, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
We talked about the impact of tariffs and trade wars. What if things went the other way?
What if we saw a surge in global cooperation?
A renewed push for free trade.
How would that affect a company like Abbott with its big international presence?
It could open up a whole new world of growth opportunities.
A world with fewer barriers, harmonized regulations, and more collaboration across borders.
That would be a game changer for a lot of companies.
Including Abbott.
It just goes to show that things can change quickly in the investing world.
What seems like a risk today could become an advantage tomorrow.
So stay informed, be adaptable, and keep learning.
Because the best investors are the ones who can think critically, analyze information, and make good decisions even when there's uncertainty.
Thank you for joining us on Investing Talk Podcast today.
We hope you found our deep dive into Abbott Laboratories informative.
We always appreciate your feedback.
So if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment.
Let us know your thoughts on Abbott or any other companies you'd like us to cover in the future.
Until next time, happy investing.